Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Officials search for answers after a Black Hawk helicopter crashes into a commercial airline with more than 64 people aboard. We have the latest, including rescue and recovery efforts.
Hostages are returning home to Israel in a third round of prisoner exchanges between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, a major UN agency is ordered to stop operations in Israel.
President Trump has signed the Laken-Riley Act, the first legislation to arrive at his desk this term, as well as announce a new move to send illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay.
Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director are in the hot seat today. Plus, more on the new head of the EPA, who was confirmed yesterday.
House GOP leadership touts a bottom-to-top approach in the reconciliation process as they wrapped up the third day of their policy retreat.
The Federal Reserve hits pause on interest rate cuts. What Fed Chair Jerome Powell says about the decision and the current state of the economy.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Hi, welcome to NTD.
Welcome also from me. Today's Thursday, January 30th. Topping this morning's news, we are starting with the tragic incident last night. Scores of people are feared dead after a tragic midair collision. An
American Airlines regional passenger jet with 64 people on board and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided and crashed into the frigid Potomac River near Reagan Washington National Airport. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on this developing story.
Officials did not provide a death toll from Wednesday night's collision, but Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, where the flight originated, suggested most, if not all, those on board had been killed. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser discussed rescue operations in the Potomac River launched after the crash.
They are working diligently in very dark and cold conditions, cold water, to execute this rescue operation.
Newly sworn-in Transport Secretary Sean Duffy promised to provide all needed support.
The tragedy that we're going to deal with this recovery, I think is touching everyone's hearts, whether it's here in the greater D.C. area or in Kansas.
The U.S. Figure Skating Organization confirmed that figure skaters and coaches returning from the national championships in Wichita, Kansas, were on the flight. Russian state media reported that former world champions and ice skating coaches Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov were among the passengers on the plane. Eyewitness footage showed a helicopter patrolling and shining a spotlight into the Potomac River, along with other aircraft seen in the distance. Divers could be seen deployed to the river on early Thursday morning near the crash site. American Airlines confirmed 60 passengers and 4 crew members were aboard the jet. The helicopter, on a training flight, was carrying 3 soldiers. CBS News, citing a police official, said at least 18 bodies had been recovered. The midair collision occurred as the passenger jet, traveling from Wichita in Kansas, was on approach to land at Reagan. Radio communications between the air traffic control tower and the Black Hawk showed the helicopter crew knew the plane was in the vicinity. The Pentagon said it was launching an investigation. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump questioned why the control tower asked the helicopter crew if they saw the plane instead of giving direct instructions. Air traffic control recordings appear to capture the final attempted communications with the helicopter before it collides with the plane described as CRJ. It said, "Do you have a CRJ in sight? Pass behind the CRJ." Seconds later, another aircraft calls in to air traffic control saying, "Tower, did you see that?" apparently referring to the crash. An air traffic controller then redirects planes heading to runway 33 to go around. Washington, D.C. Fire Chief John Donnelly said at least 300 first responders were continuing to work on the highly complex rescue operation. Airports Authority CEO John Potter said the airport would remain closed until at least 11 a.m. on Thursday. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Hamas has begun releasing hostages with a total of 8 prisoners expected today, including 3 Israeli and 5 Thai nationals.
In return, Israel is expected to release another 110 Palestinian prisoners. This is the 3rd release since a ceasefire took place earlier this month.
The Israel Defense Forces confirmed that Agam Berger has been released. She is a 20-year-old female Israeli soldier who reunited with her family just an hour ago. The IDF also reported that 2 other Israeli hostages were handed over to the Red Cross in Khan Yunis. That's 29-year-old Arbel Yehud and 80-year-old Gadi Moses, both taken captive from kibbutz Nir Oz.
We'll keep you updated on these developments. And meanwhile, a major UN agency has 24 hours to stop operations in Israel. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Residents in Israel gathered in Jerusalem as they continue to call for the release of all remaining hostages still held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And on Wednesday, an Israeli government spokesman confirmed the hostages are set to be released on Thursday. They include civilian hostage Arbel Yehud, Israeli soldier Agam Berger, and another civilian that he did not name. However, people at the demonstration received news that the 3rd individual to be released was 80-year-old Gadi Moses.
Some happy and exciting moments to know that Gadi Moses, who is 80 years old, survived the Hamas captivity, and he's going to be back with the 2 girls tomorrow.
Also on Wednesday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. And according to Israel's Channel 13, Witkoff's visit to Israel included an inspection of the corridor that separates the North and South Gaza Strip. And for the past few days, tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians have passed through that corridor as they return to their homes in northern Gaza for the first time in over a year. However, one resident said he didn't stay there for long before deciding to go back to Khan Yunis in southern Gaza.
There is no food or anything to drink, no water, nothing. Ghost without souls. We all miss the north, but when I went there, I was shocked. So I'll return to Khan Yunis until God relieves us. I have been traveling back since 4 a.m., heading to Khan Yunis.
And speaking of food and water, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, also known as UNRWA, must stop operations in Israel by Thursday. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, gave their reasoning on Tuesday.
This decision was driven by UNRWA's constant refusal to address the widespread infiltration of its ranks by Hamas and other terrorist organizations.
The commissioner of UNRWA said the decision is harming the lives and future of Palestinians.
At stake is the fate of millions of Palestinians, the ceasefire, and the prospect for a political solution that brings lasting peace and security.
Meanwhile, the deputy U.S. ambassador to the UN said the U.S. supports Israel's decision.
UNRWA exaggerating the effects of the laws and suggesting that they will force the entire humanitarian response to halt is irresponsible and dangerous.
Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon reaffirmed Israel's readiness to cooperate with other UN agencies that he says are not tainted by terror. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And meanwhile, in the U.S., President Trump announced plans to fight anti-Semitism. He says he will cancel the student visas of Hamas sympathizers.
He's calling for the deportation of non-citizens who violate laws. Trump said he would marshal all federal resources to investigate and punish offenders on college campuses.
The plans were outlined in an executive order yesterday.
The Council on American Islamic Relations said yesterday it is considering challenging the order in court. A senior attorney at Columbia University's Knight First Amendment Institute said deporting non-citizens on the basis of their political speech would be unconstitutional.
President Trump has signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, the first legislation to get to his desk in his second term.
Along with the legislative win, Trump also announces a new move to send illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
President Trump signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, which would require federal officials to arrest and detain illegal immigrants who have been accused of crimes like theft, assault on police officers, or causing the death or serious injury to others. And President Trump, while signing the act, highlighted the case of Laken-Riley, a Georgia nursing student who was brutally killed by an illegal immigrant. Watch.
She was a light of warmth and kindness in every single room. With today's action, her name will also live forever in the laws of our country, and this is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together.
And notably, the Laken-Riley Act was passed in Congress with not just Republican support, but also with the support of dozens of Democratic lawmakers, Trump highlighting that bipartisan support. Meanwhile, the parents and the sister of Laken-Riley were also at the signing ceremony today. Her mom, speaking emotionally, thanks President Trump for keeping his word to protect the border and remembering her daughter's name.
There's no amount of change that will ever bring back our precious Laken. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives. We're so thankful that her passion for helping others and her legacy for doing good in the name of Jesus Christ will carry on. Thank you.
And during the signing ceremony, President Trump also announced a new order to send up to 30,000 illegal immigrants, or what he calls worst of the worst, to Guantanamo Bay. And President Trump's border czar Tom Homan, talking to us on the White House campus, told us that that's already actually expanding an existing migrant center at Gitmo. Watch.
Detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them.
The significant public safety threats, we can fly them. We fly.
We're doing it. We're already doing it.
We identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs.
And that was President Trump addressing the latest move to stop funding and some grants to some agencies and programs. We remember that there's been this controversy starting 2 days ago when there's a memo by the Office of Management and Budget going out to all agencies saying that it's pausing those funds. But of course, on Wednesday, we saw another move by the office that is actually rescinding that memo. The White House did clarify to us, though, that does not mean that the funding that they wanted to freeze is actually not frozen anymore. They say that although the memo is rescinded, the funding that specifically they're targeting, for example, those going out to what they call wasteful programs, as well as to foreign contractors, some of them targeting DEI, transgenderism, and other subjects that President Trump in his executive order specifically mentioned that he will target. Those funds and monies actually will still be subject to administration's freezing. Meanwhile, this is the latest movement surrounding that controversy, so President Trump addressing a variety of topics.
Up next, RFK Jr. faced a Senate hearing yesterday for his nomination as HHS Secretary. A reporter from the Epoch Times analyzes the details of his lengthy questioning.
House GOP leadership touts a bottom-to-top approach in the reconciliation process as they wrapped up the third day of their policy retreat. Stay tuned for that.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid. and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic, so I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Welcome back. A big day in the Senate with two more President Trump's nominees in the hot seat.
Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director will face questions from lawmakers. Here's what to expect later this morning.
Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel will appear before Senate committees Thursday. They're both key national security nominees. President Trump nominated Gabbard as his Director of National Intelligence. The former Congresswoman from Hawaii currently serves as a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. Gabbard is likely to face questions about her views on foreign policy. She has described herself as a military hawk when it comes to tackling terrorism abroad, but has spoken out against what she once called counterproductive wars of regime change. She has criticized U.S. intervention in Syria. She also supports a negotiated settlement to the Russia-Ukraine war. Gabbard's critics in the Senate have accused her of spreading false claims in support of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Wednesday it wouldn't be unreasonable to ask if Gabbard would use the DNI to, quote, push false intelligence for political ends. But Senate Republicans say her record is clean. Gabbard has also spoken out against domestic surveillance laws like Section 702 of FISA, which she described as a blank check to trample Americans' civil liberties. Meanwhile, Democrats have accused Kash Patel, Trump's pick for FBI director, of promoting conspiracies about the 2020 election. And Senator Richard Blumenthal says he plans to question Patel on his views on the QAnon movement. Patel has criticized what he calls corruption and politicization in the FBI. In September, he said if he were put in charge of the agency, he would shut down its headquarters in Washington on day one. Another controversial nominee, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is scheduled for one more Senate nomination hearing on Thursday. On Wednesday, the Senate confirmed former Congressman Lee Zeldin as the director of the Environmental Protection Agency. Trump picked Zeldin to lead the EPA's effort to reverse many of the Biden administration's rules, including on drilling emissions and electric vehicles. Among the EPA's main actions under Zeldin will be to review the so-called endangerment finding. That's the agency's determination that greenhouse gases harm human health. As a New York congressman, Zeldin voted against legislation on green issues.
And yesterday's hot seat was occupied by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for his confirmation hearing as a controversial pick to head the Department of Health and Human Services. How did that go? Let's hear from Jeff Louderback. He is a reporter for the Epoch Times. Jeff, good morning. So what did the public learn from yesterday's hearing? What are his priorities when becoming an HHS secretary?
Well, as he said all along, starting his presidential campaign April 2023 through
leaving the race in August of last year to back Trump. And since then, as the HHS nominee and leading the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, it's been a consistent message. What he wants to do is end corporate corruption, what he calls corporate corruption of government health agencies. He wants to clean up the food supply. He wants to remove chemicals from foods, and he advocates for vaccine safety and for informed consent. And that was a contentious form of debate yesterday, questioning from Democrats, saying that he is anti-vaccine, which has been a consistent message of critics. But as he reiterated again, he's for vaccine safety, he's for informed consent, and for thorough nonpartisan studies of vaccines to make sure they're safe.
So yeah, let's delve into this a little bit deeper about his stance on vaccines, because like you mentioned, that was one of the biggest skepticisms towards him, at least from the Democratic side. Now, how did he handle the questioning there, and what was the pushback like?
Well, he got, if you watched the hearing, that it was mostly across party lines. Democrats, I know Elizabeth Warren peppered him with questions. Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon peppered him with questions about hard on vaccines, about whether Senator Wyden talked about or focused on the fact that he believes that Senator Wyden believes that RFK Jr. wants to take away vaccines. RFK Jr. reiterated again that he doesn't want to do that. He's never said that. He's always focused on vaccine safety and informed consent. I know Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, said that or wanted him to vow that he wouldn't sue pharmaceutical companies, and RFK Jr. refused to do that. It just seems like it's the same across party lines. Democrats call him an anti-vaxxer. And I know some Republicans are concerned about his abortion views, and both of those lines of questioning were on display yesterday.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, because this was my next topic. His history of support for abortion rights came into the spotlight. Now tell me more about, well, first of all, maybe for context, his history. And, you know, there was this questioning by Senator Maggie Hassan and how that played out. She basically accused him of being a sellout to President Trump, right?
Well, his views have changed, and I remember I covered his campaign from the beginning and had the privilege of doing a lot of one-on-one interviews with him over the course of his campaign. And early on, he said he would be open to what people tell him. He'd be open to change his mind. Like early on, he was more in line with then President Biden on the border policy on the southern border. But then he went down there and experienced it firsthand, saw it firsthand, talked to a lot of people, and he changed his view. It was similar to his view on abortion has evolved, and it's really more similar to President Trump's now. He had that interview that drew a lot of attention on the Sage Steele show, I believe, where he said that he would be open to abortion at full term, but then he talked to advisors and realized that that's not something that's conducive to what his advisors think and what the public thinks. So his views are more in line with President Trump's on certain limits. So that was on display yesterday. The line of questioning, wondering why, asking why he's evolved or he's changed. So some people think he's evolved and other people think he's backtracked. So, I mean, that's Democrats and Republicans alike have questioned him about that.
Right, depends on which angle you're looking from, right? So how did you read the room in terms of how much support he had then, you know, from Democrats and Republicans alike?
Well, it's interesting. In the gallery when he walked in yesterday, he had applause. And then when he left, when the hearing wrapped up, he had a standing ovation. And as far as the lawmakers, I would say it's as expected. Republicans support him. Republicans obviously have a 53-47 majority in the Senate. But as we saw with Pete Hegseth, with the Secretary of Defense hearing, there's some Republicans who might not support RFK Jr. I'm thinking of Senator McConnell, Senator Murkowski, Senator Collins. But interestingly, in this case, he could get support by people like Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, John Fetterman. There's possibilities he could get support from them. And it was pretty much as expected, very contentious by Democrats and mostly praise from Republicans. The Senate Finance Committee, which was yesterday, oversees the HHS, and they will determine if RFK Jr. advances to a full Senate floor vote. This morning, he has a Senate Health Committee hearing, but that is more informative, educational. They don't determine whether he goes to the Senate floor. That's the Senate Finance Committee.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for covering all that. Yeah, it's very interesting because Bernie Sanders, on one hand, he received a lot of criticism in terms of his vaccine stance, but on the other hand, it was surprising that Bernie Sanders said he somewhat supports the MAHA movement. So let's leave it at that. We're looking forward to what will happen today. Thank you so much, Jeff Louderback. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, the House Republican annual policy retreat has concluded, and lawmakers are traveling back to D.C. to finalize the budget reconciliation proposal.
Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has more on the story.
Day 3 of the House Republican annual policy retreat is over, and House Republican leadership have not yet divulged any details on the total costs and total spending cuts of the budget reconciliation proposal.
History will look back at this retreat as this is where the blueprint for change began. We listened, we strategized, and now we've put pen to paper, and the House will be ready to lead the way.
According to House Republican leadership, 11 committee chairs have been involved in the negotiation process for the budget reconciliation proposal, and 98% of the House Republican Conference has given their input into this process. Only 14 members of the House Republican Conference have not participated so far, and many of them due to scheduling issues.
We stay unified, we can get anything done. We have to hash out our differences, and that's what we're doing. There will be 11 committees involved in the actual budget reconciliation process. And so a number of those committee chairs had sessions where they laid out the details. You know, these are the things we're going to work on. These are the savings that we're going to achieve.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson tamed the public's expectation on spending cuts. According to Speaker Johnson, the House Republican Conference budget reconciliation proposal will have a spending cut floor of what House Republicans believe is the minimum necessary spending cuts required to deliver President Trump's campaign promises, instead of aiming for a spending cut ceiling.
And as we've said, when we return to the Hill, the Budget Committee will be marking up a budget that serves as the foundation for the reconciliation process. That's going to happen, and we'll get it through the whole chamber, and we'll be voting on that by late February, and that will keep us on the aggressive schedule that has been set out to make sure we accomplish this mission.
On Wednesday, Speaker Johnson restated the House Republican Conference's goal of having a budget reconciliation resolution by the end of the month of February. According to Speaker Johnson, if House Republicans are able to deliver on President Trump's campaign promises, House Republicans will be able to hold on to the majority in the lower chamber of Congress for over a decade. Reporting from Miami, Florida, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
With the threat of tariffs looming, Canada's foreign minister is in Washington, D.C.
Melanie Joly met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday.
What we're establishing right now is clear lines of contacts, conversations, being able to present what we're doing, to address their concerns. And I'm cautiously optimistic. But meanwhile, like I've mentioned many, many times, while we're doing that work, we're also ready to retaliate should they decide to impose unfair tariffs against Canadians.
Trump insists tariffs are necessary to convince Canada to crack down on illegal immigration and the smuggling of fentanyl. Jolie said yesterday she told Rubio that Canada has a plan and that they're committed to working together to solve the fentanyl crisis.
Earlier this week, Jolie said she plans to engage with allied nations to counteract potential tariffs. Jolie also said she will be staying in Washington until tomorrow and will be joined by other ministers of Canada.
The Trump administration is ending the protected status of over 500,000 Venezuelans in the U.S.
This comes as ICE reports it has already arrested over 5,000 illegal immigrants since President Trump took office. NTD's Arian Pastar has the immigration update.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says her predecessor enacted extended protection for Venezuelans in the U.S. before he left office. The Trump administration is now getting rid of it through an executive order on Wednesday. Here's Noem talking about the issue on Fox News.
We were not going to follow through on what he did to tie our hands, that we are going to follow the process, evaluate all of these individuals that are in our country, including the Venezuelans that are here.
The extended protection had given Venezuelans an additional 18 months of deportation relief and access to work permits. Noem says the U.S. is now in talks to send the individuals back to Venezuela. A day prior, on Tuesday, Venezuela's socialist president, Nicolas Maduro, said this about possible returns.
We want them to return so they can be happy here, so they can come to create businesses, work, and build in their land.
Noem added that the State Department is speaking with other countries about taking their citizens back as well. This comes as planes continue landing in Colombia this week, bringing back deported immigrants. Colombia's president on Wednesday saying the U.S. shouldn't treat all immigrants as criminals, only those who committed crimes.
One man said all Jews were criminals, and he killed 6 million of them. Were they criminals? Were they? Or was it a Nazi error?
On Tuesday, the new White House press secretary commented on that same issue about only deporting immigrants who committed crimes.
And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., new video published on Wednesday shows ICE raiding a building in Chicago. They reportedly detained immigrants suspected of having ties to the Venezuelan gang Trendy Aragua. This comes as ICE gives an update on the arrests of illegal immigrants since President Trump took office. The agency says that, as of Wednesday, it made over 5,500 arrests and lodged over 4,300 detainers. ICE agents are conducting raids and arrests across the country. Locations often targeted are major cities like New York and Chicago. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
More coverage for you. President Trump cutting federal support for gender transition procedures. A biologist joins us to discuss the impact of his executive order and how it will affect people with gender dysphoria.
Also, sources say Meta has agreed to settle a lawsuit for banning President Trump. The tech company will reportedly pay $25 million.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
So at the age of 5, I was sexually molested. I had my first child at the age of 15 and became homeless at the age of 16. The scariest part about not having a place to live was having a child and not having a place to live and not knowing where our meal was going to come from and where we're going to sleep. To be homeless as a teen, I didn't ask for that.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or a warm meal to eat, or whether anyone cares about them. 1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year, and that's unacceptable. But the good news is there is an organization making a big difference, Covenant House.
Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis.
It was pretty tough. But Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today.
Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life. They gave me the love that I needed. They just really genuinely just wanted to help me succeed, and I'm succeeding.
Your $19 monthly gift is urgently needed to reach other young people who are facing unimaginable situations. Call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Your support makes the work of Covenant House possible. Thank you for caring.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back.
If you're just now joining us, here are some of today's top stories.
A tragic mid-air collision near Reagan Washington National Airport. It involved an American Airlines jet with 64 people and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. Both crashed into the Potomac River. Rescue and recovery operations are underway. The official death toll has not been confirmed, but Senator Roger Marshall suggested most passengers likely perished. The people on board the flight included figure skaters returning from the national championships in Kansas.
The Israel Defense Forces have confirmed that Agam Berger has been released. She's a 20-year-old female Israeli soldier who reunited with her family just an hour ago. The IDF also reported that 2 other Israeli hostages and 5 foreign nationals were handed over to the Red Cross in Han Yunis. Israel is expected to release another 110 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for these hostages. This marks the 3rd hostage release since the ceasefire began earlier this month.
A big day in the Senate as 2 more of President Trump's nominees, Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel, are in the hot seat. Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director will face questions from lawmakers. And Trump's nominee to head the EPA was confirmed yesterday. He was promised to cut regulations and reassess the agency's stance on greenhouse gas emissions.
President Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law yesterday, which would require federal officials to arrest and detain illegal immigrants who have been accused of crimes like theft, assault on police officers, and causing the death or serious injury to others. During the signing ceremony, President Trump also announced a new order to send up to 30,000 illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay.
And now we have a quick live feed of the plane crash, and we will get some updates from the press.
Water, so that recovery is going to go on today. As that recovery takes place of the fuselage of the aircraft, NTSB is going to start to analyze that aircraft, partner with the FAA with all of the information we have to get the best results possible for the American people. I would just say that safety is our expectation. Everyone who flies in American skies expects that we fly safely, that when you depart an airport, you get to your destination. That didn't happen last night. And I know that President Trump, his administration, the FAA, the DOT, we will not rest until we have answers for the families and for the flying public. You should be assured that when you fly, you're safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mayor. I'm joined today with Fire Chief Bonnet from the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, and I'm John Donnelly, Chief of the District of Columbia Fire and EMS Department. Last night at 8:48, the control tower sounded an alert, which alerts responders to respond to a report of an aircraft crash on or near the airport. That sets off an immediate response from the Airport Authority Fire Department, from the District of Columbia and Metropolitan Harbor Patrol fire boats and other fire boats on the river in order to support that type of operation. Very quickly, this call escalated. It became apparent, the responders realized that they had a plane crash and immediately escalated to a response that ultimately included about 300 people last night. These responders found extremely frigid conditions. They found heavy wind. They found ice on the water, and they're operated all night in those conditions. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the agencies that responded in addition to DC Fire and EMS and Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority: Montgomery County Fire Department, the Prince George's County Fire Department, the Charles County Fire Department, the Baltimore County Police Department, the Anne Arundel County Fire Department, the Alexandria Fire Department, the Arlington County Fire Department, the Fairfax Fire Department, the Prince William Fire Department, the Baltimore City Police Department, the Maryland State Police, the Maryland Natural Resources Police, the Department of Defense, the Joint Base in Bowling Fire Department and the staff there, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Coast Guard, the United States Park Police, the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, and the NTSB. Despite all those efforts, we are now at a point where we are switching from a rescue operation to a recovery operation. At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident, and we have recovered 27 people from the plane and 1 from the helicopter. The District Office of the Medical Examiner has lead on reuniting these bodies and these people with their loved ones, and we will continue to work to find all the bodies and collect them and reunite them with their loved ones. We should also acknowledge that the Virginia Medical Examiner and the Army Medical Examiner are involved in this operation and a very important part of getting the people identified. So.
Our hearts are certainly with all of the crew in American Airlines, and we'll hear from CEO Isom.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. I'm Robert Isom, the CEO of American Airlines. I want to express my sincere condolences for the accident that happened at DCA last night. We're absolutely heartbroken for the family and loved ones of the passengers and crew members, and also for those that were on the military aircraft. Our focus right now is doing everything that we can to support all of those involved and also the PSA Airlines team. This is devastating. We are all hurting incredibly. We urge any family and friends looking for information about their loved ones to call our designated helpline, and that's at 1-800-679-8215, 1-800-679-8215. And here's what I can share at this early stage. American Eagle Flight 5342, operated by PSA Airlines, traveling from Wichita, Kansas to Reagan National Airport, was involved in an accident just before 9 p.m. local time on final approach into Reagan National. It collided with a military aircraft on an otherwise normal approach. And at this time, we don't know why the military aircraft came into the path of the PSA aircraft. Flight 5342, a CRJ 700, was under the command of 4 crew members. They carried 60 passengers, as you know, for a total of 64 people on board. In addition to local resources already here in DC, American Airlines has activated our care team, and that's a group of specialists that are trained to support these types of responses. These team members are on site or arriving soon. And additionally, we have members of our GO team that are on ground here in D.C., and they're being deployed with resources to do everything that we can to take care of the needs of the families and the loved ones of the passengers and crew members. And that is our sole focus. And we're so grateful for the first responders. They've been working through the night, courageous efforts. And we're actively working with local, state, and federal authorities on emergency response efforts and closely coordinating with PSA Airlines as they cooperate fully with the NTSB on the investigation. I know that there are many questions. At this early stage, I just won't be able to answer many, but we'll provide additional information as it comes. Thank you.
I want to introduce the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority CEO, Jack Potter. The authority manages Reagan Washington National and Dulles International.
Good morning and thank you, Mayor. First, let me begin by expressing our condolences for all the victims of this flight and for their families. There's a lot of grieving going on, and so we're very sympathetic to that. I want to echo what was said about the first responders. When there's a problem in this area, everybody drops everything and they rush to wherever the problem is. So I want to thank the chief, the entire team from Washington, D.C., but just as important, the list of folks that the chief described. The federal authorities have been here en masse, and so a lot of effort was brought to bear. Unfortunately, we weren't able to rescue anyone, but we are in the recovery mode right now. And I just want to, last night I expressed the fact that we hope to open at 11 o'clock today, and that is still the case. We're going to open the airport at 11 o'clock. And again, condolences to the families, and thanks to the many, many who are still out there working very, very hard to complete this recovery. Thank you, ma'am.
I do want to acknowledge that the Virginia Transportation Secretary is here, in addition to the Alexandria Mayor, and I will like to ask members of the Virginia congressional delegation to the podium next. U.S. Senator Mark Warner, followed by Tim Kaine and Representative Don Beyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to join with everyone else and express my condolences for the victims. For folks who don't live in the DMV, we are made up of a lot of jurisdictions. Reagan Airport's in Virginia. Across the river we have Maryland, obviously the district, but as been indicated by the chief, when tragedy happens, all those distinctions between the various jurisdictions and our federal partners all disappear. And I want to again thank all the first responders. On a personal note, I'll just add that literally I now know I was coming back from the district from a dinner to my home in Old Town Alexandria. And while I did not see the collision, I wondered, I'd never seen this many red lights streaming towards the airport and across the river in Maryland about this time. My phone started blowing up, and I realized that this accident had taken place. There'll be a time to figure out. I know NTSB will have a briefing later in the day. But to the victims, our condolences. To the first responders, our thanks.
Sorrow, thanks, and questions. So sorrow, as all have expressed, to the crew, to the passengers, to the soldiers, to their families, to their friends, to their loved ones, to people who are still trying to get information and unsure whether their loved ones have been lost. We offer our profound condolences to them and our sorrow for this tragedy. Thanks, I'll echo, Mayor, what you began with. When you see a challenge like this and you see people from so many different agencies, local, state, federal, with different uniforms, different badges, but working in such a coordinated way, even in the midst of a tragedy, it does give you a sense of appreciation and pride in people's willingness to come to the danger and work together. And I started to see that as a local official 30 years ago in Richmond, and definitely have seen it here. And then finally, questions. There are going to be a lot of questions, obviously, a lot of questions. And that's what the NTSB's job is to be an independent investigator of incidents like this. And they are here. We were in dialogue with them earlier today. They've been here since they got the alert, and they will be doing the work and playing lead in answering the many questions that we have. And that's as it should be. It's not a time to speculate. It's a time to investigate and get answers to the questions we need. And I have confidence that will be done. Thank you.
Following up on the Senator, I think grief, thanks, and service, with millions and millions of Americans traveling every year, we are all grieving, knowing that it could have been our loved ones, it could have been us. And our hearts go out to all those who have lost folks. In a most partisan place, also, I'm really thankful that Democrats and Republicans, people from all over, have come together to try to make sure that people are served. As a local representative, I want the families to know that our office is available to serve you in any way we possibly can through this time of grief and transition and loss. And then also just note that we're deeply grateful for the people who risked their lives last night on a moment's notice and spent the whole night on the river in the ice and the wind, serving us. And then finally, as Senator Warner noted, after the NTSB investigation, we've got to make sure that at the federal level and with the support of Virginia, Maryland, D.C., we're doing everything we can to make sure this does not happen again.
So with that, it's been said already that the National Transportation Safety Board becomes the lead agency in the investigation. Our jurisdiction in D.C., where the crash occurred over the river, concludes as we, in the leadership role of the Unified Command, as we shift to a recovery effort. We expect the National Transportation Safety Board to provide briefings to the press later in the day. So at this point, we can take a few questions. Yes?
Can you say without a shadow of a doubt that people are safe to fly?
What we can talk about today is what happened here with the collision of these vehicles. We've said what we know, and that the National Transportation Safety Board continues to investigate. I don't know that any of us have been briefed on anything that would suggest any other aircraft are implicated. Yes?
You're still missing 30-plus people in the water. What are some of the challenges in recovering them right now?
Chief.
So the rescue operation, or the recovery operation, goes on. It's a lot of touch and feel in the different parts of the plane or in the helicopter. And the crash area is a little spread out, so we've got some work to do. And I think it's a pretty normal type of situation. I don't think it's extraordinary.
How spread out is this debris field?
So the wind started blowing last night, so we've had debris travel from the airport down as far as the Wilson Bridge.
Mile-wise, how far is that?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Less than a month.
This is a question for CEO Carter. You're going to open the airport at 11 o'clock this morning. How are you going to do that? And what impact is that going to have on operations, on passengers, on people's anxiety? How are we going to do this?
Well, we're going to open the airport at 11 o'clock. It's safe. We've worked with all the federal agencies, FAA, and it's been determined that we can open that airport safely. The recovery effort that's on our property is on the waterfront. Our primary runway, 119, will be open. It's away from any activity. We're going to have a secure area around that, so all are comfortable that we can get back to operations. Now, each airline will announce or communicate to their passengers what their operations are going to be. Obviously, their networks were disrupted overnight, and so we might have a slow recovery, but the bottom line is we will begin to have aircraft moving in and out of this airport at 11 o'clock.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Has the flight recorder been recovered, the black box at all?
I don't think we can say anything about what's in NTSB's purview.
You mentioned the airport opens 3 hours from now. There's a lot of helicopter traffic from the military, U.S. Park Police and all that. Will helicopters be flying right through here as well, beyond the recovery efforts?
I don't know the answer to that. Jack, do you have anything to add? We don't have anything to add about that. Yes.
For Secretary Duffy, can you reassure Americans that the U.S. still has the safest airspace in the world?
So the question is, can I guarantee the American flying public that the United States has the most safe and secure airspace in the world? And the answer to that is absolutely, yes, we do. We have early indicators of what happened here, and I will tell you with complete confidence, we have the safest airspace in the world.
When it comes to informing these families who've tragically lost their loved ones, what does that look like so far? Have any of them been informed? The flight manifest, is there any details you can provide on that front?
Can you add anything?
All I can say is that we have published the 1-800 number. We have family assistance centers set up here in DCA. We do in Wichita as well. I'm not at liberty to give the number of families that have been that have used those services, but we are making that use. We have over 100 team members that are either here or on their way that are specially trained to work with family members, handle travel arrangements, hotel arrangements, incidentals, to make sure that we're taking care of people in any way that they can. As you know, as our teams are hurting and suffering, as our passengers and their families need assistance, we're doing everything we can. I don't have any more information on that right now.
Mayor,
you're next.
Chief Donnelly, can I ask you to describe the next phase of the investigation? How confident are you that you'll be able to recover all 67 of these bodies? And can you speak to some of the debris that's also being pulled out of the river? We understand there are some suitcases, some other things that have been pulled out from the river. And I would like to ask anyone here, perhaps the Transportation Secretary or Mr. Eisen, if we know anything about these victims, age ranges, nationalities, anything of that nature.
So the next phase of this operation is going to be led by the NTSB. All of us are working together, though, to search the area and to find the victims. I'm confident that we will do that, and that will take us a little bit of time, though. It may involve some more equipment. As far as the things being collected, I don't have personal knowledge. I know that we have been collecting debris that you would expect to see from a plane.
Okay. Anything about the victims?
So the question is about the victims. The NTSB is going to lead that portion of the contact with the victims. I believe American is going to be involved with that as well, and so will the FAA and the Department of Transportation.
Secretary Duffy,
we're going to take some questions over here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
For Secretary Duffy, the flight path that the helicopter was on, is that a common flight path, and is it normal for helicopters to get clearance to cut across busy approach paths?
So I don't know if you all could hear the question. It's a question about the flight path of the helicopter. I don't want to go into too much detail about the information we have from the FAA, but obviously it is not standard to have aircraft collide. I want to be clear on that. But prior to the collision, the flight paths that were being flown from the military and from American, that was not unusual for what happens in the DC airspace. And as this investigation moves forward, we will be able to provide more information to you about the details of that statement.
I wanted to follow up on that question regarding the flight path, because you said it's standard. So can you speak to the conversations with the air traffic control? Were there blind spots here? I don't know if you can understand.
So the question is, were there blind spots with air traffic control? I don't want to make statements about that. I don't lead into that answer. But again, I think whether it was air traffic control, whether it was military aircraft, helicopters, or the American flight, everything was standard in the lead up to the crash. Now, obviously, something happened here. You'll get more information and more details as this investigation moves forward. We'll learn what happened. But again, those who live in the D.C. area, we see military helicopters fly up and down the river. It's a standard path that they fly. They're used to aircraft landing at DCA, and there's a procedure in place because this happens every day. Something went wrong here. I look forward to the time and point when we can give you that information, but I don't want to comment on that right now.
Okay, next.
Senator Payne, Senator Warner, you all have been very vocal about your concerns about busy runways here, air traffic. I know it's still early in the investigation. I'm just curious if any steps that you all plan to take to address that.
We have raised this issue continuously. We've got very busy airspace. I think we will ask questions, but at the appropriate time. We are in this period right now where families are still being notified. We're trying to figure out what happened. There'll be time for those discussions, I think.
Yeah, I just say the same thing. We've been pretty plain about our concerns, but it isn't a good time to speculate right now. We have faith that the NTSB will provide the answers about this.
Okay, you fourth here, and I'm going to take 3 in the middle, and then we're going to have to wrap 1, 2, 3 after this young man.
Thank you, appreciate it. Chief, I know, again, I can imagine it must be traumatic for your first responders to have to deal with this. How are they doing right now, and are you all going to be offering any services to help them as they process this?
So thank you for the question. Our first responders are resilient people, but yes, this call will be hard for them. Our peer support teams are already engaged with the responders, and we'll be following up on that to make sure that they're okay. But I think the concern is real.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. What kind of communication was there between the helicopter and the tower, the plane and the tower, and the helicopter and the plane?
I don't want to say too much on the communication between the helicopter and the tower and the airline and the tower, but I will say this: there was communication. It was I would say standard communication. So there was not a breakdown, if that's your question, in communication between the military helicopter and the American airline flight. There was communication between the aircraft and the tower.
Was the plane aware there was a helicopter in the area?
I would say the helicopter was aware that there was a plane in the area.
You mentioned that, so the president, you said yesterday that he called into the briefing room. Has he returned to the briefing room since then? Have you spoken? Also a question about the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. He's saying that there was 30 bodies that have been recovered. He just said that at the White House. Curious, I know you're in this presser right now, so that's hard for you to update, but I do have the question posed in the briefing room.
I can do the body question first. So in terms of body recovery, as we recover bodies, we have a process, and we're not counting any bodies until they're in the possession of the medical director. So there may be some fluctuating in numbers that other people would report, but our numbers from the medical examiner.
So just in regard to the president in the briefing room, I've been with this team for the last hour plus as we've worked through the details of the information we wanted to give you. But it is my understanding that either this morning he was going to be in the Situation Room, or the Situation Room is obviously briefing the president. He has been kept in full appraisal of what is taking place.
Okay, last two, you and you ma'am. First.
You mentioned that the aircraft were on a standard flight pattern. Just curious, when the airport opens at 11 today, will planes be on that flight pattern again, or are they being directed to fly a different way to land?
Jack, do you want to mention it? Okay.
Well, I mean, safety is paramount, and I don't have that information quite yet from the FAA, so I don't want to provide an information I don't want to provide an answer or inaccurate information on what routes will be flown out of DCA.
Okay, last one.
Two questions really quickly. What do you know about the experience and history of the pilots of both the American Airlines plane and the Army Black Hawk helicopter? And then for Secretary Duffy, last night the president had said that this could have been prevented and questioned why air traffic control didn't tell a helicopter what to do. Is that something that investigators have determined should have happened in this situation?
I can quickly, Secretary. Just quickly, I don't have a lot of information to release, but these are experienced pilots. I know that the captain had 6 years with PSA, or almost 6 years with PSA, and the first officer almost 2 years. Again, standard approach, and that's about all I can say. Thank you.
In regard to the military, I don't have information in regard to the experience of the military pilots. I would just note that this was classified as a training mission. Sometimes people could think that a training mission is someone who is inexperienced in the cockpit. We call these missions that are flown in the D.C. area as our pilots are getting hours in experience training missions. So don't read into that we had how many hours the pilots on the military aircraft had. And you had another question for me that was...
Last night the president had said that this could be prevented, and also that air traffic control, questioning why they may not have communicated with the helicopter telling them what to do.
We are going to wait for all the information to come in from this vantage point, but to back up what the president said, what I've seen so far, do I think this was preventable? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there an acting FAA director?
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Officials search for answers after a Black Hawk helicopter crashes into a commercial airline with more than 64 people aboard. We have the latest, including recovery efforts.
Hostages are returning home to Israel in a third round of prisoner exchanges between Israel and Hamas.
Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director are in the hot seat today, plus more on the new head of the EPA, who was confirmed yesterday.
Super Bowl 59 is just over a week away. These teams have mastered the game and work very well together. A leadership expert shares his thoughts on how we can learn from them to boost our careers.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today's Thursday, January 30th. Topping the news this morning, we're starting with a tragic incident last night. Scores of people are feared dead after a tragic mid-air collision. DC officials just gave an update saying they believe there are no survivors and are changing from rescue to recovery operations.
An American Airlines regional passenger jet with 64 people on board and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided and crashed into the frigid Potomac River near Reagan Washington National Airport. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on this developing story.
Officials did not provide a death toll from Wednesday night's collision, but Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, where the flight originated, suggested most, if not all, those on board had been killed. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser discussed rescue operations in the Potomac River launched after the crash.
They are working diligently in very dark and cold conditions, cold water, to execute this rescue operation.
Newly sworn in Transport Secretary Sean Duffy promised to provide all needed support.
The tragedy that we're going to deal with this recovery, I think is touching everyone's hearts, whether it's here in the greater D.C. area or in Kansas.
The U.S. Figure Skating Organization confirmed that figure skaters and coaches returning from the national championships in Wichita, Kansas, were on the flight. Russian state media reported that former world champions and ice skating coaches Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov were among the passengers on the plane. Eyewitness footage showed a helicopter patrolling and shining a spotlight into the Potomac River, along with other aircraft seen in the distance. Divers could be seen deployed to the river on early Thursday morning near the crash site. American Airlines confirmed 60 passengers and 4 crew members were aboard the jet. The helicopter, on a training flight, was carrying 3 soldiers. CBS News, citing a police official, said at least 18 bodies had been recovered. The mid-air collision occurred as the passenger jet traveling from Wichita in Kansas, was on approach to land at Reagan. Radio communications between the air traffic control tower and the Black Hawk showed the helicopter crew knew the plane was in the vicinity. The Pentagon said it was launching an investigation. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump questioned why the control tower asked the helicopter crew if they saw the plane instead of giving direct instructions. Air traffic control recordings appear to capture the final attempted communications with the helicopter before it collides with the plane described as CRJ. It said, "Do you have a CRJ in sight? Pass behind the CRJ." Seconds later, another aircraft calls in to air traffic control saying, "Tower, did you see that?" apparently referring to the crash. An air traffic controller then redirects planes heading to runway 33 to go around. Washington, D.C. Fire Chief John Donnelly said at least 300 first responders were continuing to work on the highly complex rescue operation. Airports Authority CEO John Potter said the airport would remain closed until at least 11 a.m. on Thursday. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Over to the Middle East, Hamas has begun releasing hostages, with a total of 8 prisoners expected today, including 3 Israeli and 5 Thai nationals.
In return, Israel is expected to release another 110 Palestinian prisoners. This is the 3rd release since a ceasefire took place earlier this month.
The Israel Defense Forces confirmed that Agam Berger has been released. She is a 20-year-old female Israeli soldier who reunited with her family just an hour ago. The IDF also reported that 2 other Israeli and 5 Thai hostages have crossed into Israeli territory. That's 29-year-old Arbel Yehud and 80-year-old Gadi Moses, both taken captive from kibbutz Nir Oz.
The identities of the 5 Thai hostages are unknown at this point. 2 rounds of releases have already taken place. According to the Israeli government, 8 of the remaining Israeli hostages set to be released are dead. We'll keep you updated on these developments.
President Trump announced plans to fight anti-Semitism. He says he will cancel the student visas of Hamas sympathizers.
He is calling for the deportation of non-citizens who violate laws. Trump said he would marshal all federal resources to investigate and punish offenders on college campuses.
The plans were outlined in an executive order yesterday.
The Council on American Islamic Relations said yesterday it is considering challenging the order in court. A senior attorney at Columbia University's Knight First Amendment Institute said deporting non-citizens on the basis of their political speech would be unconstitutional.
President Donald Trump has signed 3 new executive orders focused on education.
One order blocks federal funding for K-12 schools that teach gender ideology or critical race theory, calling them forms of indoctrination.
The text of the order says parents have, quote, witnessed schools indoctrinate their children in radical anti-American ideologies while deliberately blocking parental oversight. Another executive order pushes for school choice. It directs the Education Department to expand programs that give families more options.
The third action targets anti-Semitism on college campuses. It directs the Justice Department to crack down on crimes like vandalism and intimidation. It also calls for the deportation of non-resident students involved in unlawful protests. President Trump signed another executive order aimed at protecting children from what he calls chemical and surgical mutilation. It directs the federal government to stop funding and supporting so-called gender transition procedures. To delve into these specifics, we invite Colin Wright, an evolutionary biologist and fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Good morning, Colin. First, can you unpack a few of the steps that Trump is taking here in this executive order?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty sweeping executive order. It really blocks all federal funds from funding any of this, whether it's through Medicaid or any other way that these procedures are commonly done. It includes blocking things like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries for kids under 19-year-olds. And it even ends the reliance on what it calls junk science and calls specifically out by name the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH, for promoting their standards of care, which are widely known to not be based on sound science. It even refers to their standards of care number 8, which is widely known for removing age minimums on kids who can begin these types of procedures, and also introduced a chapter on eunuchs, so people who have a gender identity of being castrated. So it rightly calls out this extreme organization. It's having the HHS publish a review of the evidence in favor of these procedures. But it should be widely known that there have been many systematic reviews that have been done on this topic, specifically in the UK. There's the Kash review, which was based on 7 systematic reviews on the evidence, looking at things like puberty blockers and double mastectomies and other areas of gender-affirming care, and it found no good evidence to suggest that any of these procedures actually benefit the individual, and tons of reasons to suggest that we should be approaching this with more caution, because this leads to lifelong sterility and changes your body permanently. So right now, no federal funds are going to be able to support this, so it's going to be back to the states, really, if they want to fund this in their own capacity.
Well, thanks for listing all that out for us. The story surrounding this is a detransitioner, Prisha Mosley. She's a woman who tried to transition to a man and detransitioned. So she was one of the people who actually suffered from gender dysphoria, and she says that those people, they have problems, and that's all the more reason why they should be denied access to who she calls harmful doctors that are involved in these gender transition procedures. So they have to take those away, because those people and their parents have been lied by the trans community about the risks, she says. If you have more to comment there, you can, or just how this executive order would impact people with gender dysphoria.
Yeah, so people like Prisha, I think the detransitioners have really led this fight in combating this type of mutilation for kids, gender-affirming care. Many of these kids are told that they were born in the wrong body, that you literally have a boy brain and a girl body, or vice versa. This is completely pseudoscience. It is junk science, as the executive order puts out. Hopefully, the people who have detransitioned are able to seek justice in some way based on this. I'm hoping lawsuits are going to be filed based on this. And right now, kids who have gender dysphoria, what the executive order suggests happen, which is what a lot of us have been trying to promote for many years now, is a medical alternative to the WPATH's really highly medicalized system, where the second you say that you have issues with your gender or uncomfortable with your body and your identity, they immediately recommend things like puberty blockers, which lock people into then taking cross-sex hormones and surgeries, where we should be giving these kids therapy first, trying to actually get at the reasons that underlie why they might be having these feelings, rather than medicalizing immediately. So this is a huge step. I mean, so much of the gender industry is funded by federal funds, and so this doesn't solve the issue completely, but it definitely just removes a huge source of what's been pushing this for the last decade or more.
Okay, Colin, and at the same time, it's facing some pushback. The so-named Human Rights Campaign president says that this is an attempt to put politicians between people and their doctors. So is that what's happening here?
Not entirely, because this area of medicine isn't based on evidence-based medicine. This is based on an ideology that has taken over a lot of these fields, because there is no good evidence to suggest that these are actually beneficial. As I mentioned, all the systematic reviews, every single one of them has concluded that there's no good evidence to support these procedures. So parents don't have the right to advocate their children take procedures that have no good evidence of benefit. We wouldn't let parents sign a waiver off on their kids just having limbs amputated just because they felt like they were paraplegic or something, or they identify as an amputee. And so, no, it's not simply something between your doctor when the doctors aren't really recommending evidence-based medicine.
We really appreciate you helping us make sense of all of this. Colin Wright, evolutionary biologist and fellow at the Manhattan Institute.
Now, President Trump has signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, the first legislation to get to his desk in his second term.
Along with the legislative win, Trump also announces a new move to send illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
President Trump signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, which would require federal officials to arrest and detain illegal immigrants who have been accused of crimes like theft, assault on police officers, or causing the death or serious injury to others. And President Trump, while signing the act, highlighted the case of Laken-Riley, a Georgia nursing student who was brutally killed by an illegal immigrant. Watch.
She was a light of warmth and kindness in every single room. With today's action, her name will also live forever in the laws of our country, and this is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together.
And notably, the Laken-Riley Act was passed in Congress with not just Republican support, but also with the support of dozens of Democratic lawmakers, Trump highlighting that bipartisan support. Meanwhile, the parents and the sister of Laken-Riley were also at the signing ceremony today. Her mom, speaking emotionally, thanks President Trump for keeping his word to protect the border and remembering her daughter's name.
There's no amount of change that will ever bring back our precious Laken. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives. We're so thankful that her passion for helping others and her legacy for doing good in the name of Jesus Christ will carry on. Thank you.
And during the signing ceremony, President Trump also announced a new order to send up to 30,000 illegal immigrants, or what he calls worst of the worst, to Guantanamo Bay. And President Trump's border czar Tom Homan, talking to us on the White House campus, told us that that's already actually expanding an existing migrant center at Gitmo. Watch.
Detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them.
The significant public safety threats, we can fly them. We fly.
We're doing it. We're already doing it.
We identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs.
And that was President Trump addressing the latest move to stop funding and some grants to some agencies and programs. We remember that there's been this controversy starting 2 days ago when there's a memo by the Office of Management and Budget going out to all agencies saying that it's pausing those funds. But of course, on Wednesday, we saw another move by the office that is actually rescinding that memo. The White House did clarify to us, though, that does not mean that the funding that they wanted to freeze is actually not frozen anymore. They say that although the memo is rescinded, the funding that specifically they're targeting, for example, those going out to what they call wasteful programs, as well as to foreign contractors, some of them targeting DEI, transgenderism, and other subjects that President Trump in his executive order specifically mentioned that he will target. Those funds and monies actually will still be subject to administration's freezing. Meanwhile, this is the latest movement surrounding that controversy, so President Trump addressing a variety of topics.
Up next, Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director are in the hot seat today, plus more on the new head of the EPA who was confirmed yesterday.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9, the highest concentration possible without chemical additives. Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented MyPillow. MyPillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King MyPillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic MyPillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Welcome back. A big day in the Senate with two more of President Trump's nominees in the hot seat.
Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director will face questions from lawmakers. Here's what to expect later this morning.
Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel will appear before Senate committees Thursday. They're both key national security nominees. President Trump nominated Gabbard as his Director of National Intelligence. The former Congresswoman from Hawaii currently serves as a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. Gabbard is likely to face questions about her views on foreign policy. She has described herself as a military hawk when it comes to tackling terrorism abroad, but has spoken out against what she once called counterproductive wars of regime change. She has criticized U.S. intervention in Syria. She also supports a negotiated settlement to the Russia-Ukraine war. Gabbard's critics in the Senate have accused her of spreading false claims in support of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Wednesday it wouldn't be unreasonable to ask if Gabbard would use the DNI to, quote, push false intelligence for political ends. But Senate Republicans say her record is clean. Gabbard has also spoken out against domestic surveillance laws like Section 702 of FISA, which she described as a blank check to trample Americans' civil liberties. Meanwhile, Democrats have accused Kash Patel, Trump's pick for FBI director, of promoting conspiracies about the 2020 election. And Senator Richard Blumenthal says he plans to question Patel on his views on the QAnon movement. Patel has criticized what he calls corruption and politicization in the FBI. In September, he said if he were put in charge of the agency, he would shut down its headquarters in Washington on day one. Another controversial nominee, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is scheduled for one more Senate nomination hearing on Thursday. On Wednesday, the Senate confirmed former Congressman Lee Zeldin as the director of the Environmental Protection Agency. Trump picked Zeldin to lead the EPA's effort to reverse many of the Biden administration's rules, including on drilling, emissions, and electric vehicles. Among the EPA's main actions under Zeldin will be to review the so-called endangerment finding. That's the agency's determination that greenhouse gases harm human health. As a New York congressman, Zeldin voted against legislation on green issues.
The House Republican annual policy retreat has concluded, and lawmakers are traveling back to D.C. to finalize the budget reconciliation proposal.
Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Day 3 of the House Republican annual policy retreat is over, and House Republican leadership have not yet divulged any details on the total costs and total spending cuts of the budget reconciliation proposal.
History will look back at this retreat as this is where the blueprint for change began. We listened, we strategized, and now we've put pen to paper, and the House will be ready to lead the way.
According to House Republican leadership, 11 committee chairs have been involved in the negotiation process for the budget reconciliation proposal, and 98% of the House Republican Conference has given their input into this process. Only 14 members of the House Republican Conference have not participated so far, and many of them due to scheduling issues.
We stay unified, we can get anything done.
We have to hash out our differences, and that's what we're doing. But there will be 11 committees involved in the actual budget reconciliation process. And so a number of those committee chairs had sessions where they laid out the details. You know, these are the things we're going to work on. These are the savings that we're going to achieve.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson tamed the public's expectation on spending cuts. According to Speaker Johnson, the House Republican Conference budget reconciliation proposal will have a spending cut floor of what House Republicans believe is the minimum necessary spending cuts required to deliver President Trump's campaign promises, instead of aiming for a spending cut ceiling.
And as we've said, when we return to the Hill, the Budget Committee will be marking up a budget that serves as the foundation for the reconciliation process. That's going to happen, and we'll get it through the whole chamber, and we'll be voting on that by late February, and that will keep us on the aggressive schedule that has been set out to make sure we accomplish this mission.
On Wednesday, Speaker Johnson restated the House Republican Conference's goal of having a budget reconciliation resolution by the end of the month of February. According to Speaker Johnson, if House Republicans are able to deliver on President Trump's campaign promises, House Republicans will be able to hold on to the majority in the lower chamber of Congress for over a decade. Reporting from Miami, Florida, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
With a threat of tariffs looming, Canada's foreign minister is in Washington, D.C.
Melanie Joly met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday.
What we're establishing right now is clear lines of contacts, conversations, being able to present what we're doing, to address their concerns. And I'm cautiously optimistic. But meanwhile, like I've mentioned many, many times, while we're doing that work, we're also ready to retaliate should they decide to impose unfair tariffs against Canadians.
Trump insists tariffs are necessary to convince Canada to crack down on illegal migration and the smuggling of fentanyl. Joly said yesterday she told Rubio that Canada has a plan and that they're committed to working together to solve the fentanyl crisis.
Earlier this week, Joly said she plans to engage with allied nations to counteract potential tariffs. Joly said she would be staying in Washington until tomorrow and will be joined by other ministers of Canada.
And heading now to Europe, where the economy has been slowing down over the past year, with industrial productivity showing a decline.
Some industry leaders are calling for a shift in EU policies to be more like those in the United States. Members of the European Parliament have also called for an end to the green agenda.
Now, NTD's international correspondent David Vives reports from Brussels.
Some economists in Europe and fiscal lawyers have reported a movement of businesses and wealthy financiers from Europe to the United States. Germany's economy is slowing down and prepares for another year of recession in 2025. Meanwhile, France faces a similar struggle, with the new businesses targeted taxes likely to be approved.
Following the first days of Trump's presidency in January, EU leaders have called for a more competitive Europe. A 5-year roadmap suggests that member states should increase investments in sustainable energy, which could transform into a competitive advantage. The Council of Europe says member states should fund this new program. But for some energy experts and politicians, the pursuit of a green energy agenda is precisely what slowed Europe's industries in the first place.
When I sold my companies in 2016, a big part of my companies, I also wanted to leave Europe and move to the United States, but my wife didn't want to do that. But we are really destroying our economy. If you want to have prosperity, you need energy. And we cannot generate energy with wind turbines and solar panels. Just a little, but it's just a little.
Alarming signs point to the decline of the EU economy. The European Commission's Financial Services Department stated in November 2024 that capital market integration is regressing across the continent. Some industry leaders urged the EU to adopt a capital market model more similar to that of the United States.
A stunning statistic is in the last 20 years, 20 years ago, the EU and the US were about broadly equal economically, GDP per head. Now the USA is 50% higher than the EU. So what's happening? You've got here in Brussels a red tape factory that Elon Musk could have a lot of fun with, because it is generating too much red tape, too much regulation, It's costing too much. It's destroying jobs. It's holding the economy back.
German firms committed $15.7 billion to U.S. projects in 2023, marking a significant increase from $8.2 billion in 2022. David Vives, NTD News, Brussels.
Up next, the Federal Reserve paused interest rate cuts yesterday. It's the agency's first key decision in President Trump's second term. We take a look at what it means for borrowers going forward.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I overdosed on heroin and I lived. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I found the fatherhood program, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. My desire to change had finally outweighed my desire to stay the same. I felt powerless for so much of my life that it's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. For the first time, I finally feel like I'm exactly where I should be, where I want to be.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
We are taught you don't talk about your problems with nobody because you could get in trouble. And I've been through a lot. Anxiety, depression, sexual assault. When I decided to get help, my life changed. And the mental health box, that was one of the big tools. Accepting help means that we are allowing somebody to bless our life. It's freeing. We got stronger together. Love your mind.
Welcome back.
If you're just now joining us, here are the big news stories of the day.
A tragic mid-air collision near Reagan Washington National Airport. It involved an American Airlines jet with 64 people and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 soldiers. Officials say that crews are moving from rescue to recovery operations after recovering 28 bodies, believing there are no survivors. The people on board the flight included figure skaters returning from the national championships in Kansas.
The Israel Defense Forces have confirmed that Agam Berger has been released. She's a 20-year-old female Israeli soldier who reunited with her family just a few hours ago. The IDF also reported that 2 other Israeli and 5 Thai hostages have crossed into Israeli territory. Meanwhile, Israel has delayed the release of another 110 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for these hostages. This marks the 3rd hostage release since the ceasefire began earlier this month.
President Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law yesterday, which would require federal officials to arrest and detain illegal immigrants who have been accused of crimes like theft, assault on police officers, and causing death or serious injury to others. During the signing ceremony, President Trump also announced a new order to send up to 30,000 illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay.
A big day in the Senate as two more of President Trump's nominees, Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel, are in the hot seat. Trump's picks for Director of National Intelligence and FBI Director will face questions from lawmakers, and Trump's nominee to head the EPA was confirmed yesterday. He has promised to cut regulations and reassess the agency's stance on greenhouse gas emissions. The Federal Reserve yesterday hit pause on interest rate cuts. This is the agency's first key decision in President Trump's second term. Take a look at what it means for borrowers now and going forward.
The Federal Reserve holding its benchmark rate steady amid lingering concerns about inflation.
In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged.
The slow and steady approach at odds with President Donald Trump's wishes, saying last week he wants the Fed to move swiftly.
I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world.
But U.S. inflation is still above the Fed's target rate of 2%. With the labor market sturdy and consumers still spending, Greg McBride, chief financial analyst for Bankrate, says the independent Fed doesn't see economic urgency for lower rates.
The economy, from a growth perspective, has continued to surprise to the upside. So there's nothing in the economy that's necessarily compelling the Fed to reduce interest rates or reduce them at a rapid clip.
Amid talk of Trump's tariff proposals that could lead to higher prices and immigration policy reforms that could upend the labor market, McBride says the central bank will continue to make decisions driven by data, not speculation. And borrowers looking for more relief on interest payments will have to wait.
Interest rates are not going to come down fast enough or soon enough to really ease the burden in a meaningful way. If you're carrying high-cost debt like credit cards or even home equity lines of credit, many of which are in double-digit interest rate territory, you need to stay on offense, be aggressive about paying down that debt, because you can't sit back and wait for lower interest rates to come along.
Coming up, the Super Bowl is right around the corner. Have you ever wondered how these coaches put together such cohesive teams that can outperform the rest? A leadership expert talks to us about how we can adopt their strategies to better our professional lives.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting givetosave.org. For as little as $10 a month, You can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school. Support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit givetosave.org today.
Welcome back. The Super Bowl, it's big time entertainment, but we can also learn a lot from these superstar athletes and coaches.
And to tell us how, we have Mick Hunt joining us in the studio. He's a modern leadership expert. Thanks for coming on, Mick.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and he is the founder of Mick Unplugged podcast, doing a lot of things. Also an author of How to Be a Good Leader When You've Never Had One. This is a really good topic that we're talking about. I mean, these two teams, Kansas City and Philly, I mean, they were just facing off a couple of years ago.
Right.
Now they're back at it again for the Super Bowl. So what sets them apart, and how can we adopt some of their leadership skills to improve our performance at work?
Yeah, when you think of KC and you think of Philly, you think of systems and you think of culture. And so for businesses, for leaders, that's what it's about. It's about what are your systems and what's the culture that you're doing? Because when you lead a business, as a leader, you're not leading the X's and O's, you're leading the culture, and it's the culture and the systems that lead the business.
Can you expand on that, on the importance of culture? Why culture?
Because culture is everything. To me, culture is a four-letter word, C-A-R-E, and how much do you care? And for me, that's what great leaders are, is they show care, because care isn't something you can talk about, care is demonstrated. And so for me, that's what your culture is. Culture isn't a word that you say, it's what are you demonstrating, what are your habits, what are your actions?
Well, let's talk about, we know that the game is coming out. Let's talk about Kansas City Chief quarterback. We all know him, 3 times Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes, and how he leads his team. Do you think that's transferable to, work teams or even, just privately as a family?
Yeah, when you think of Patrick Mahomes, right, you see a lot of the improvisation, like the no-look passes, the little shuttle passes and things like that. But what you don't see is the trust, the preparation, the execution. And to me, that's what we translate into our business. Patrick never throws a pass he hasn't practiced or prepared for. And so for me, that's what leadership is about. Do you trust your team? Do you prepare? Do you put in the work when no one's really looking? And then do you execute? And to me, that's what Patrick Mahomes embodies. That's excellent. Yeah, well, you remember Tony Dungy, when he led the Colts to win Super Bowl 41, he said that the culture you create permeates everything you do. That's so right. It kind of goes back to your point, right? I mean, how do you build a culture like that, whether it's in a family environment or if you're in a workplace? Yeah, you have to communicate. You have to let everyone know what your target is. What's the mission? Where are we trying to go? And you have to be very transparent, because if Evelyn's doing something and Kevin, you're on the team, but you don't know, there's no trust, there's no transparency. So culture has to start with the transparency of, here's what we're trying to do, here's where we're going, and here's how or why we're going to get there. Yeah, Nick Sirianni, he's the Eagles head coach, and he's probably doing a lot to motivate his players behind the scenes. I mean, that's how you build a tight-knit program like that. So how do we incorporate that to help us build strong mindsets among the people that we're working with? It's all about buy-in, right? I think one thing that Nick Sirianni does really well is he has the team really bought in, right? When you go through a long season like both of these teams have gone through, it's the buy-in, because what you say week 1 has to change to week 5. You can't be boring and say the exact same thing, because then people naturally are going to tune you out, right? So for me, it's the inspiration beyond the motivation. So are they inspired? And to me as a leader, that's the thing. It's no longer motivation, it's inspiration, right? Because motivation is a paycheck. Inspiration brings you back the next day. Wow. Right? Yeah. And so are you really inspiring your team? And that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's a great distinction to make, and very interesting. Now, excuse me, let's talk about it in action, and I love a good football reference, right? So since Super Bowl is coming up in February, What should we look out for on the field, and to see whether it was leadership and that it was, or it was just pure athleticism?
Yeah, pay attention to the fourth quarter. That's when you see all the adjustments, right? You see the coaches have made adjustments. They've just come back from halftime. They had a really big plan in the third quarter. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, maybe the other team adjusted. So what team is adjusting the best to real life situations? And so as leaders, right, we have a business plan. We have a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan. It never goes right. It's the adjustments that we make as leaders. And so how are you adjusting real time? And then how are you going back to Nick Sirianni? How are you getting your team bought in to those adjustments and then executing those adjustments? And that's what the game's going to come down to. It's going to come down to adjustments and execution.
It's going to be exciting, yeah, and to really pick apart how those teams manage that stress. I mean, you remember back in Super Bowl 56 when the LA Rams gave up 17 unanswered points to the Bengals, and then they came back and won it. Yeah. Think about their mindset. Like, no, just focus on this play. Just fall back on your trust that you've built, right? Yeah. So it's amazing. But now Bill Belichick, he's got the record 6 of these Super Bowl rings, 2 as an assistant coach or other. So, I mean, that's the Pats. They're doing really good. That's a lot of victories he's got. So what was his mantra, and how does that create an atmosphere for success?
Well, Kevin, I'm a Pats guy, right? We talked offline about me and Bill Belichick and the history there. But his mantra, do your job. That simple. Focus on what you need to do to win, to dominate that one play at a time. And again, going back to leadership, just do your job. Right? Don't try to do more than is asked. If I need you to do this one thing, do the one thing and master that one thing. And to me, that's what, again, great leadership is about, is allowing your team to do their job and to do it the right way.
Right. So on the topic of allowing your team to do their job, how important is this teamwork and keeping them all together? How do these teams in the Super Bowl, how do they really achieve that?
Yeah, it's one, communicating the goal and the vision, right? And it's allowing your team to do what they do. But most importantly, it's making sure you've got the right people. I call it the right butts in the right seats, right? Having the right people in the right seats to be a team. So, Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback. Maybe he could kick, but he's a great quarterback, right? And so it's the trust of Patrick being the best quarterback that we need for this team. And so same thing for your office or your business. It's how are you making sure that you're allowing your people to thrive in the best environment that they can thrive in, and ask them to do those things.
So many good tips from you. Mick Hunt, modern leadership expert, author, and podcaster. Thanks for coming in and talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Now we're heading to a quick break, but before that, actually,
looks like we got some more time. Actually, Mick. All right, so you watch the Super Bowl.
Yes.
What are you going to be looking for? I mean, these guys, they put so many hours in. It's not just about the drills they do, right? Yeah. It's a lot of that is behind the scenes. Yeah. It's the way they coordinate with each other, the cues they give, the ideas that they have in their mind, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for the execution, really, right? Everybody has a great game plan. So how are people living and running that game plan? That's what I'm looking for. Can you eliminate mistakes, so no turnovers, right? And then when you get a little friction, a little resistance, how do you adapt? How do you adjust? That's what I look for.
And also, I think, failure is a big part of that, right? So when somebody falls or somebody loses one game, how do you keep them, how do you keep them motivated and get up again and keep doing their thing and win the next game?
Yeah, in sports, there's a lot of film work, right? So win or lose, you're watching film the next day. So what are the lessons that we learned? And I think for leaders, having that look back, like what was yesterday like, or this last project, what did we learn, right? So when we talk about a failure only stays a failure if we don't learn a lesson from it and adjust or course correct from that lesson. And so I think with failure, it's, did we learn something? And then what are we going to do so that now becomes a win?
Yeah, you got to watch the tape. You correct anything, tighten all that up. But I mean, there's the football. I mean, you could have a pick six, you could have a fumble. I mean, these could be very costly.
Right.
But how do you get into that mindset, in our daily lives of just, if there's something that goes wrong, you just focus on the next play, the next step.
Yeah, you said it, like the next play, right? We have an opportunity to go do something again. And so don't let something as bad as a pick six, right? Or, I didn't close that sale or I didn't close that deal. There should be another opportunity coming. And so learn from it, but then immediately put that momentum into the next thing, the next play, the next project.
Got it. Well, sounds like we're actually ending it here. No break. Sorry to throw you that curveball. It happens. This is live TV, everyone. So we're ending our show right here, but be sure to tune back in at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's when NTD News Today is up.
Yes, thanks again for coming on. Mick Hunt, author, leadership expert, and podcaster. We really appreciate you. Yes, and definitely stay tuned for around-the-clock original news coverage and visit us at ntd.com or download our app.
That's right. Thanks for watching. Now, I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today. Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and